Billy Napier has been fired at the University of Florida. Joe, probably the biggest unkept secret over the last couple of weeks with everything that's been coming out. But Florida and Scott Strickland make the move on Billy Napier. I give the floor over to you first. What are your thoughts?
This was something that, as you just said, it was inevitable. And it was really disappointing because it felt like Billy Napier was starting to turn this thing around. I think the biggest part of the disappointment, Blake, was that clearly his players were bought in. His players were really passionate about playing for him. The effort that they put towards helping him keep his job last year, and then at parts this season that didn't come through as much as it needed to, that was promising. And it was also exciting to see a lot of times, and especially in the modern version of college football, we don't always get that level of commitment from players. They might just see it as an opportunity for a paycheck, or they just see it as a stepping stone for their next team that they go to. The Florida players wanted to be there and wanted to play for Billy. The problem was the lack of execution. And I think the craziest part about this is the stubbornness by Billy Napier to not hand off play calling. It felt like there were a lot of times when offensively, there was a lot left on the field. There was a lot of production that could have been had with the talent that they had, and the play calling didn't really live up to what the hype could have been. Not to mention, again, the miscues. Head coach should have handled preventing those miscues from happening if he was focused on the details instead of calling the plays. So this is something, as you just said, it was really not a secret. This was something that was going to come eventually, and here it is.
Look, I think that Billy had a good – so there's been a debate with me all week from like the LSU side of things about culture versus coaching, right? I don't know if Billy's culture was bad, meaning I don't think that guys didn't buy in. I don't think that there was a problem where that he didn't have buy-in from people. But, Joe, the overall truth of it is they're 3-4 this year. And I know that they rallied back a season ago. They went 8-5, but he has 3 straight seasons, or 3 seasons at the current moment where they've lost. They were 6-7 in 22, which you got to rebuild. And listen, they played very tough. He went 5-7 in 2023. Things got really bad there. He went 8-5 last year after they rallied off 5 really good wins there at the end. And now they're 3-4 after the Mississippi State win here. I think Billy is a good coach. I don't think he's a good head coach. I think it's his way or the highway. And when it went his way and he did it his way, he got fired for his troubles. And you're right on the play calling aspect. Look, is he a good recruiter? Well, look at the defensive side of the football. Look at what you have at wide receiver. Look at what you have at quarterback and all these different things and players that they brought in. He could not get out of his own way. And that was the ultimate downfall. I thought they did a really good job in recruiting. I mean, again, Joe, look at their defense. Look at what they have and the pieces they have offensively. But the ineptitude in reference to what they did offensively is what's going to come back to bite him. He's not a bad coach. He's 62-35 in his career. I'm sure down the line, Billy will actually get another shot after what he did at ULL and even some of the stuff here. But I look at the overall situation, Joe, they were so chaotic in moments and times. They constantly shot themselves in the foot. He constantly shot himself in the foot. And so when you look at Billy Napier, did I think he did a lot of really good things? Did he get buy-in and things like that? Yes. But the problem is that at the end of the day, he just couldn't get out of his own way to propel this team to what Florida needs to be. Now, I'll say this too. I think of all these coaching hires that may come up, and there's going to be a lot of them. I think Wisconsin's still going to come open. I think Auburn's still going to become open as we take this right now. If it's not already open and it's not out there, who knows what other jobs come open in the very near future, what happens at Florida State. There is no more a sleeping giant more than the University of Florida. And I think from a Florida fan base standpoint, Joe, you look at Florida, you look at what you can do in recruiting, the money that they spent. Joe, they had a lame duck head coach last year, and they're still spending a ridiculous amount of money to get guys like Dallas Wilson, to get guys like DJ Lagway. The buy-in at that place is for real. And the right fit and the right head coach getting there would be absolutely insane. And Joe, nobody wants to see Florida have success. Nobody. Because if you get the right man at the helm there, that place will take off.
Well, and I would kind of reframe this slightly. I wouldn't consider them a sleeping giant. They are a giant. It's the best. It's the best coaching job that's going to be available. No matter what comes open this cycle, I think it's going to be the best coaching job. I really do. I think that, as you just said, there are resources. There's a commitment to resources. It is in a general recruiting hotbed region, not just from the fact that it's in the state of Florida, but the surrounding states that are nearby allows for it to be able to entice recruits in the Southeast to want to go play there. I wonder what direction they go in. And I think that when you have this failure with Billy Napier, bringing him up from the G5 level, you're always going to try and swing in a different direction. It's not a program that's going to give a coordinator an opportunity, but with the opposite direction is trying to get somebody that is already established consistency at a Power 4 team. I know Marcus Freeman's going to get brought up a ton, and I'm going to continue to reiterate this. It doesn't make sense for Marcus Freeman to leave because of the success that he's having at Notre Dame. Why would he enter somewhere that has a lot more difficult of a path to get to the college football playoff? Not to mention the fact that Notre Dame will gladly do what Indiana just did with Kurt Signetti. They will give him extensions. They will give him more money if teams start to circle. That being said, we've talked a lot about Lane Kiffin. We've talked a lot about Eli Drinkwitz as two guys in the conference that are tremendous, tremendous coaches. Those have to be the first two that are brought up because Missouri and Ole Miss are not supposed to be outperforming Florida. So go and take the guys that are leading the programs that are currently outperforming you. I think that those are the first two people. And then I would, if you can't and get either of them to come to Florida, start looking down the list and see what shots you can take across the country.
Well, Joe, I mean, I know you talk about the G5 there, but a coach came from the G5 and came in your building and beat you. And Alex Golish. So, I mean, you might not have to go far. You know, there was a funny thing in reference to did Alex Golish just beat the team that he's about to start coaching here? So I agree. I think that there is, like, you look at Lane, and I think that Lane is going to, regardless if he stays at Ole Miss, all these other head coaching jobs that will become open, he's going to be a target. I don't know if he stays at Ole Miss. I mean, but he's got to be the number one guy that you look at here. I agree with Steve Spurrier. He's dead on accurate. Lane Kiffin at Florida would be absolutely dangerous. I don't think that there's anybody in the SEC and, quite frankly, the country that can look at if Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss to go to Florida that in a 3-year span shouldn't be terrified. Let me ask you this question. What would he do with this current roster? Joe, I know Ole Miss this past weekend went into Athens with a far less talented roster. And, Joe, let's call it what it is. I mean, I think even in a loss, I think even in a loss, Joe, that they're not going to fall out of the top 10, nor should they. I mean, like, Georgia has a loss to Bama. I mean, they're all there at the top in the SEC. Ole Miss. So, do you understand where we're coming from? What if Lane had that Florida defense yesterday? Newsflash.
That's why I would give him the blank check out of anyone.
I agree. Now, I don't know what Lane's thinking. You brought up Eli Drinkwitz. I know Florida fans probably wouldn't like that, but Eli's a winner. Mm-hmm. Eli's a winner. And whether we like it or not, there's still a very good chance, Joe, that he's going to go on another run of a 10-win season. He would win there. I don't know if Eli can get you over the hump. The reason why you look at Kiffin and say that he could is because, Joe, he doesn't have that level of talent. He doesn't have the in-state recruiting like that Florida does. He doesn't have the all-in buy-in.
But how much better does Missouri have, though?
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Neither does Drake. So you get to a situation where both of them are overachieving at their current situations. And those would be two very, very good coaches to be able to bring in. Speaking of Lane, Joe, there was a story this past week that Billy Napier tried to bring in Charlie Weiss Jr. to be his play caller, and he said no. So, I mean, listen, everybody knew the writing was on the wall. And I also say this. I don't think people wanted to coach for Billy. I think they knew that the writing was on the wall. So, look, I think if you're the University of Florida, and look, Lane's name's going to be brought up in so many of these coaching searches. If you're the University of Florida, I think that there's only one man that you can go after. You have had, and listen, you have had situations where this is way too many head coaches in a time span, and maybe Scott, and I got to say this too before we move on, Scott Strickland can't be the main one making this hire. You fired Dan Mullen after one bad year after he went to the SEC championship game. You clearly shouldn't have fired him. Well, recruiting was bad. Brothers and sisters in Christ, recruiting was good under Billy Napier, and you failed. So, listen, Joe, the bottom line here is there's only one name that you can go after right now, and he currently resides in Oxford.
And if you can't get Kiffin, I think you go to Drinkwitz. And if you can't get Drinkwitz,
you go to Summerall or Golish. But
I like the idea of John Gruden, though. Like, I think that John Gruden should be considered. Why not? Do it. Wait, why not?
What does John Gruden do in recruiting? I think names like that get thrown out, and then you look at like Bill Belichick.
But John Gruden's not Bill Belichick. The derailment with Bill Belichick.
What did he do against Mario Cristobal in recruiting?
The derailment with Bill Belichick is completely different because it's an incredibly unique situation. I think that, as I've said before, more professionalized coaches are great for the sport. He doesn't need to be the primary recruiter.
Joe, you're asking a guy that's still, with all due respect, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, you want a guy going into homes and recruiting who's still fighting a lawsuit about things that he said in emails, because that's going to go over very well. I think that he's more of a realistic candidate than you're giving it. He might be a realistic candidate, but if you go John Gruden, you're confirming to me that you're not a serious program.
He's a Super Bowl winning coach. He's a great coach. He's been a great coach.
Joe, I'm sorry. You cannot go into a living room, and when you have Florida State that might be open and Miami that's recruiting the way that they're recruiting, all Mario Cristobal's got to say to families, hey, here's the lawsuit that John Gruden's currently fighting. Buddy, don't act like that's not a big deal. It's a
wait, hold on. I'm not acting like it's not a big deal. I'm not saying that it's not a big deal. My point here I'm trying to say is that Gruden is getting brought up for these openings and NFL openings now for a reason. There has been a page turn on what happened to him in his past and with the lawsuit that is currently undergoing and all that stuff. If we're just talking from a pure football standpoint, I think a program like Florida or a program like Auburn would be more than happy to have someone like Gruden. I don't think that Gruden is the number one. I don't think that he's the number one candidate. I don't think he's going to be the first person you go to. But if you can't get Kiffin and you can't get Eli Drinkwitz, I think that it's worth taking a swing like that instead of going and hiring another G5 guy that you don't know is going to get you results. I would take Golish out of anyone, but I feel like after you just failed, and what we're currently learning the most here, there has been, with the separation and the change in the sport, there have been a lot more failures with these G5 guys that have moved up to the Power 4 level. We're about to talk about Fickle getting fired. We're about to talk about who Hugh Freeze didn't work out. Napier is another recent example of it. There's really not many guys that have made the jump in the last 3 years that have actually worked.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What about Jeff Brom?
Does he leave Louisville?
I mean, I know that's his place. Probably not, but if you offer him enough money, he will. He could do something that Billy Napier can't. That's go into Miami and beat Miami.
Beat him. Yeah, it's a fair point.
And look, he's 3-0 against top 10 teams at Louisville. He'd be a hell of a coach. Look, you got a lot of options. Here's the bottom line, as Joe and I are just still debating here. There's one man for this job. His initials are LK. Bottom line, brother. I mean, by the way, last year, you and I had this discussion at the end of the year, even after they won 5 straight games. I was the one that came out here and said, no, you got to still fire him. And they didn't do it. $19 million buyout, let's just move it to 25 to 26, is far less to get where this place needs to go. Joe, they rocking stadiums out for Billy Napier. What in the hell do you think that the momentum would be with Lane Kiffin? It would explode that place. They would be an SEC juggernaut.
I quickly toss in, by the way, if we're going to steal guys from schools that they are their alma maters, Georgia Tech, Brent Key, and then Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. I would add them to the list.
I look, we're going to talk a lot about Clark Lee, but I'm just going to tell you, he ain't leaving. And I don't think Brent Key would leave either.
A $15 million check isn't going to.
Clark Lee ain't leaving.
All right.
Brother, you don't. I know this is going to sound laughable.
They're not. Tennessee's not going to turn into some sort of powerhouse. I don't think that that's going to happen.
No, I'm not saying Vandy is.
Okay.
However, I don't think people realize how much money that he got raised and invested. They have a new athletic department who is spending a crap load of money. They would match to keep Clark Lee. They would match. I'm telling Joe.
We'll have to see if that comes to fruition.
They spent $45 million in renovations for baseball. Please don't tell me that you would give him a $5 million raise. I don't. They do it, brother. I'm telling you. All right.